"Identify yourself," I once again commanded, as I peered out of Jim's unit, trying to distinguish who was knocking. The male was now collapsed on the ground, leaning back and being supported by the glass window of the door. "Could be a trap," I told Jim. "You stay here and keep a weapon on him. I'll exit out your sliding glass door and come around that way." Jody, still bunkered down in the bedroom, nervously asked who it was as I slowly opened the egress door and carefully exit out, being mindful of the diabolical and devilish booby-trap plywood that laid across Jim's patio. There was a trail of dark red blood left in the pure white snow leading to the entrance of our building that stuck out like a sore thumb. Whoever it was appeared to be severely injured. Glancing over to my right, I still couldn't identify the bloody figure that was slumped over. I called out again, now within mere feet of the man, and yet again received nothing more than an incoherent mumble. I hopped the railing to the patio as I kept my continuous eye contact on the target. Bloody handprints now staining the glass where the individual had been knocking at. I approached steadily as Jim's silhouette rose behind from inside the building. Sidearm in my right hand pointed at his head, I extended my left hand, lifting up his slouching face. I couldn't believe it. It was the unrecognizable, badly beaten and bloody face of Blake, the member of my hand group who I'd lost contact with 4 somber days ago. He was severely beaten, one eye completely swollen shut, top and bottom lips both split and busted wide open, clothes torn and tattered, totally barefoot as his feet were suffering from the freezing effects of frostbite. "Blake, can you hear me?" I asked, as he continued drifting into unconsciousness. I yelled for Jim to open up the door, as I cautiously put my arms under his, wrapping them around his back to pull him up to his feet. It took every ounce of strength and energy I had to lift his 5-foot 11-inch frame up, as I suffered from the effects of sleep deprivation. "Who the hell is that, and what happened to him?" Jim asked. "This is Blake, the guy I was talking to over the ham radio," I answered. "I don't know what he got into, but whoever did this could have very well followed him here. Keep your eyes open and stay alert. Do me a favor and cover up those bloody tracks he left. They could be tracking him like he's a wounded deer, and he may have inadvertently led them right to our doorstep." Stumbling into Jim's apartment with Blake's badly battered and assaulted body over my shoulder, I yelled for Jody. "Give me a hand," I shouted. "Fold down the futon so I can lay him down." "Oh my God," Jody cried out. "What happened to his fingers?" I hadn't even noticed, but the pool of blood he was leaving was pouring out from his left hand. His pinky and ring fingers were missing, severed off below the knuckles. Vital fluid and hemoglobin oozing out and soiling Jim's once immaculate tan carpet. Ill-equipped to deal with this sort of trauma, the only thing I could think of was to cauterize the gruesome wound. I ran into the kitchen, grabbing the propane cooktop, and set it up on the coffee table next to the futon. Jody, shocked and appalled, asked what I was about to do. "I'm going to stop the bleeding," I said. "I'm going to burn the stubs of his fingers to close them off and mitigate the bleeding and damage. I need you to hold him down if he comes to." "Talk to me out there, Jimmy," I said over the walkie as I waited for the burner to warm. "Any sign of trouble?" "Negative," he replied. "How's he doing?" he asked. "Not good. He's missing multiple fingers on top of everything else." "Jesus Christ," Jim muttered back. Not taking any chances, and with Jody weighing just over 100 pounds, I decided to reinforce and tie Blake down on top of having her hold him down. With the propane burner now scorching hot on the high setting, I folded back his middle and index fingers along with the thumb. Not wanting to hold the nubs of his mangled fingers for too long on the burner, I cauterized in short 1 to 2 second bursts. The nauseating smell of burning flesh began to fill the room. Jody couldn't stomach it and made a mad dash to the sliding glass door, vomiting up the little that had filled her stomach. Fortunately, Blake remained unconscious during the procedure. The experience was something I never ever imagined I'd have to perform, pre-CME or post. Living through this dystopia, you either adjust or you fall victim to the hellish nightmare. No one ever said survival would be simple in a post-societal collapse. I asked Jody if she could retrieve their first aid kit so we could begin cleaning his wounds that covered his dreadfully abused body. She returned from the bathroom with just Band-Aids and Neosporin. Not exactly the type of emergency medical aid I was looking for. Shaking my head in disapproval, I told her to keep an eye on him as I ventured up to my unit to gather the necessary supplies we'd need. Hydrogen peroxide, gauze dressings, adhesive tape, antiseptic wipes, disposable instant cold packs, and with no readily available antibiotics and SHTF. I grabbed a bottle of my fish amoxicillin in hopes it would help fight off any infection he may suffer from his hand. Jody and I began treating both his injuries and the dangerous frostbite on his feet. He was in rough shape, and there was no guarantee he'd pull through and regain consciousness. Without him doing so, we'd never know who did such a vile and gruesome thing. This had to be the result of more than just one heinous and odious individual. There were monsters living among us, and we had no idea where they were or who they were. Further examination revealed a few golf ball-sized welts on the right side of Blake's head. He most likely was suffering from the effects of a colossal concussion, too. It was a miracle he was able to make his way to us, his body finally giving out and collapsing as he knocked desperately, yearning for help. With Blake now as stable as could be, and Jody looking over him, I exited the chilly, dark apartment unit. Until we hopefully got answers from him, we were now running on high alert. No more one-man solo security watches with such a treacherous, dangerous, and menacing threat lurking far too close to home. It was imperative and a possible matter of life and death to double up on patrols. A second set of eyes, ears, and firearms in case the sinister squad decided to track down and terminate both Blake and the allies who came to his aid. By now, Jim had erased and removed all signs of the blood-soaking stains that had covered our front door, sticking out like brightly colored graffiti. The red trail of blotches and splatter that blanketed the snow had also vanished. A combination of Jim's diligent work and the relentless and continuous snowfall. We were approaching 2.5 feet of early season snowpack. I couldn't tell you if it was a result of lake effect, winter storms, or a combination of both. There was no more tuning into your favorite meteorologist to get tomorrow's weather. As I walked outside to meet with Jim, I could see the fear and worry in his face. I explained the importance of having us both armed, alert, and on the ready. Already sleep-deprived and riddled with stress, both ailments were only going to get worse. Blake was too injured and definitely not well enough to evacuate and travel. The idea of fleeing to the senior center wasn't feasible for me anymore, at least not until he God willingly made a recovery. I completely understand if you and Jody want to leave today, I said. I can't guarantee your safety here if that satanic, ghastly group shows up. The only thing I can promise is bloodshed, butchery, and gore. Unless they were hot on his tail, I think the heavy wet flurries will conceal his tracks, Jim stated. I'm not going to abandon my tennis partner that easy, he joked, referring to our summertime battles on the hard courts. Besides, if you're continually running OPSEC, who's going to watch over him, he questioned. You've been such a tremendous asset to Jody and I, a neighbor, a friend. We're practically family now. And family doesn't desert one another, no matter how precarious the situation is. I decided in my younger days that I'm here for a good time, not a long time, alluding to his freestyling, easygoing, partying lifestyle he so frequently enjoyed. If that means I go out guns a-blazing like DiCaprio in Saving Private Ryan, then so be it, he exclaimed. Not wanting to ruin the heartfelt moment, I didn't even correct him and say that was Tom Hanks, not DiCaprio. Instead, I said I'm honored and grateful our lives crossed paths, neighbor. "Who the hell would disfigure, torture, and beat your buddy Blake like that?" Jim asked. "Let's face it," I said. "Even during the good times, the normal times, there's a certain segment of the population that's just downright insane and evil. Violent criminals and gangs were already terrorizing big cities long before the world went to shit. There's zero doubt that in this current catastrophe that there are homicidal maniacs hell-bent on making urban and suburban living almost impossible. It's an absolute fact that when things go bad, really bad like this, there will likely be more people who mean to do harm than there will be people who are prepared. Most people have no idea what it really takes to survive doomsday, and once their safety net is removed, they will become increasingly desperate, unpredictable, destructive, and rabid. We spent the rest of the late morning and afternoon at opposite ends of our building, watching, listening, and preparing for the possible invasion of Blake's attackers. Off and on snow flurries and temperatures hovering around the freezing mark, Jim enjoying steaming cups of instant coffee and searing cups of hot cocoa for me. While the two of us patrolled the perimeter, Jody kept watch over Blake as she boiled and warmed up sauce and frozen meatballs for spaghetti dinner on the same cooktop I used to mitigate his gruesome injury. Sleep deprived and running on a calorie deficit diet, I was starving. Much to my delight, she even included garlic bread by warming it up on my propane grill. 2 weeks into a horrific and atrocious abyss, it was as fine a cuisine as we could wish for. Unfortunately, we couldn't risk gathering and eating together. Someone always needed to be running operational security. Sacrifices continually abundant in SHTF, whether it was sleep, companionship, food, comfort, warmth, or hygiene. Jim offered to man watch while I retreated into the hallway in the building to eat, in a spot where I could still keep eyes on outside threats. Malnourished and rattle-boned, not because I didn't have enough food, but because when the lights go out and the collapse kicks off, you don't have the luxury of eating whenever you want. I was inhaling the pasta, meatballs, and bread, completely oblivious to the 30-something degree temps that occupied our hallway, also oblivious to what time it was. I never wore a watch pre-CME. I always checked the time on my smartphone, and now without it, I worried less about the hours of the day and more about the possibility of bullets flying over my head. The reason for eating such a hearty and substantial meal inside and not outside with Jim was because almost 2 weeks into Judgment Day, you didn't want neighbors who were famished, ravenous, and malnourished seeing you enjoying a feast. It'd be the quickest way to put a target on you and your group. If you have an abundance of food, they'd wonder what else you had, and it wouldn't be long before the hordes and masses showed up dazed, hungry, and dangerous, demanding their share of your resources. You could try and turn them away, but I guarantee they'll return, threatening violence, brutality, and even death. Halfway through my mouth-watering meal, with Jim still manning patrol outside, I heard Jody yell for me from inside the apartment. "Brian, come quick, I think he's waking up," she shouted. I dropped my fork and garlic bread without hesitation and immediately went charging into the dwelling. Blake was restless, confused, and scared, not knowing where he was. His one non-injured eye now open and scanning the unfamiliar environment. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, easy, buddy, it's me, Brian. You're safe here," I reassuringly said. "You collapsed outside our building hours ago, and we brought you back in." Looking at me with terror, panic, and shock in his eye and face, he said, "That's a goddamn lie. No one is safe anymore."